Is she doing okay? Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call the recess meeting for the Nash County Board of Commissioners to order. And it is customary for the Board of Commissioners to begin each meeting with a prayer by a sitting commissioner. During this time, you're welcome to stand and join us in the prayer. You're welcome to use the time for your own prayer, or you're welcome to use it for a moment of silence. We also like to begin our meeting with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. And at this time, I'd ask Commissioner Dan Cone to lead us in the invocation, and Commissioner Wayne Outlaw to lead us in the pledge. Thank you.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this another beautiful day, Lord, that you have provided for us, Lord. We just pray that you would be with us. Forgive us, Lord, when we fail you and when we don't acknowledge you for all the things you do for us each and every day. Lord, as we conduct business of Nash County, Lord, we just pray that we will do what's pleasing in your sight and what's best for the citizens of the county. Lord, just pray that you would be with us during this meeting. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you join us in the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioners. We're now on item number 4, which is board appointments for the town of Momire, and I'll call on Stacy to lead us in this, our Assistant County Manager. Good morning.
Good morning. Just real quick, the town of Momire is requesting your approval of the appointment of Jordan Jackson as extraterritorial jurisdiction member for the Momire Planning Board and Board of Adjustment, as well as the appointment of Wayne Manning as the alternate extraterritorial jurisdiction member for the Momire Planning Board and Board of Adjustment to fill an unexpired term for Meredith Bass, who is resigning.
Questions from the board? Pleasure of the board.
Motion for approval?
Motion to approve by Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cone. Questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion stands approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5 is the Housing Urgent Repair Program, 2019 closeout ordinance, and we'll ask our Finance Director, Donna Wood, to make this presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
The 2019 Urgent Repair Program was funded with $75,000 grant funding and $5,000 from a county match. The program assisted 8 low-income homeowners with crucial repairs and enabled the residents to remain in the home. The attached ordinance is submitted for approval to close out the 2019 program, and it's requesting approval from the commissioners.
Any questions for Ms. Wood on this item? You want us to make a motion and
I
close
would.
it out, what you're asking for?
Yes,
Make a motion to approve.
All right, have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Grant stands closed out. You may as well stay there, Ms. Wood, and you might have to consider it sometime during the day, since you're going to be there most of the day. It's a little bit hard to understand you, but
Okay.
we're going to keep trying.
Sure.
It's your preference, of course, now, but
Sure.
I didn't quite get all you said that last time, but that's okay. Item number 6 is consideration for exemption of a Mini Brooks Act, and I guess you need to tell us what a Mini Brooks Act is.
So the Mini Brooks Act is the requirement that if we have engineering, architectural design services, that instead of doing a proposal where we obtain quotes for the work, we obtain qualifications for the work. And then after that, we would negotiate a fee. There is an exemption process for these services that are under $50,000, where the board has the authority to exempt these from an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. And what I'm putting in front of the board is for consideration and not for any kind of approval at this point, but something I'd like to bring back April 5th, depending on the board's preference, is to allow the county manager that authority to exempt on a project-by-project basis anything that qualifies under the Mini Brooks Act, if it's under $50,000. And so what I have is a proposed resolution, which is attached and included. It's on the next page in the agenda. And that would be the resolution that I would be proposing for the commissioners to approve. And then the next item that I have in the agenda is from the School of Government, talking more about the Mini Brooks Act and indicating that the county manager, the board can allow the manager to have approval of these items less than $50,000. On a project-by-project basis, you can't do an overall exemption, but it has to be on a project-by-project basis. And then the next item I have in the agenda, if the board would consider this resolution, is how this exemption will be approved, and it would basically be a memo from the county it would be a memo to the project file from the county manager approving the exemption. So this is just something I wanted to put in front of the board instead of bringing it to you to ask for approval. At this point, just something for you to read through and consider for either the April 5th meeting or the May meeting if the board would like to consider something, this kind of exemption, and allow the county manager authority to do those exemptions.
Is the $50,000 based on the fee or based on the project size?
It's based on the estimated fee.
Fee. Anything we can do to change that whole act, which I've never liked anyway, where you hire somebody and then negotiate a price?
I think that's an authority much higher than I am, so I'm not really sure where that would come from.
So this gives you a little bit of help on a fairly small job then?
It would be, so instead of having to bring each project with an estimated, and it's for these, engineering, architectural, design services, having to bring it for each item to the board, it would give the county manager the authority to do that. But it would have to be on a project-by-project basis.
Understood, okay. Other questions from board members?
Yeah, what,
Mr. Belfield?
bring me up to date, Mini Brooks Act, what? I don't understand what we talk.
You know, Mr. Belfield, when we employ an architect or an engineer,
Yeah, I understand.
we send out RFQs, and then we interview them, and then we hire them before we ever talk about how much money we're gonna pay them. We actually have to select them first and decide who we're gonna use, and then we start negotiating a fee. I think if we can't come to terms on a fee, we are allowed to move to the next one, if I remember right. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Durham.
That's right.
But what this does is allow, if this board so chooses, any project where the fee won't be more than $50,000, the managers can waive, will have the right on a project basis to not go through that process and just employ someone without doing an RFQ for their services.
Yeah, I knew we could do that, but I didn't know, but that was what it was called, the act.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that name. I've seen it, but I really didn't tie it to that particular process.
Yeah,
Did that answer your question?
yes.
Okay. Other questions for board members?
I got a comment. I just think we ought to do what we can to do away with that. That ain't quite right. To hire somebody and then you negotiate the fee. I mean, the fee should come along with the hiring. That should be a big part, what you gonna charge.
Well, I'd suggest at a
Maybe I
future
don't
meeting that this board discuss it and ask our local legislators to look into seeing if we can't change that particular statute then.
You should take that through the legislative goals process.
Right. That'd be one place for it. So if we can all remember to do that next year, that'd be good. Okay, other questions on this? You just want to wait to another meeting to do it?
I wanted to put this in front of you to let you read over it and see if it's something that you would consider to allow the county manager that authority to do those exemptions instead of bringing each item back to the board. But I didn't want it to, I didn't want to bring it to you and ask for your approval when you haven't had an opportunity to read over the information on it.
For the record,
Sure.
the county manager didn't ask for this. She's doing it as the finance director, trying to simplify the process. Thank you.
Sure. We didn't take it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, no other questions on that, we'll move to item 7. Item 7 is the Nash County Fire District tax rate, tax increase request. Ms. Wood?
So as part of the budget workshop that we're in today, one thing that I wanted to put before you is with our fire districts, they have, in order to increase their tax rate, they have to have approval from the Nash County Board of Commissioners. And we have 3 fire districts that are requesting an increase in their tax rate. Again, this is just as part of the workshop, just to make the commissioners aware. So before it's included or put into our budget ordinance, we want the board to be able to take a look at it and consider it for further information as we get closer to the actual adoption of the 2022 budget. So the first fire district that is requesting an increase, it's Stanhope. They're requesting to move from a 7.5% to a 10-cent increase, 7.5 to 10 cent. The next one is Harrison or Brattleboro. They're currently at 10-cent tax rate, and they're requesting to go to 12. And the next fire district requesting an increase is Tri-County, Sharpsburg, and they're requesting to go from 10 cent to 13 cent. And included in your budget workbook are the letters from each fire district and indicating their reasoning behind their increase request. So again, this is to put it in front of the board so you have that information and take a look at it, and if you have concerns, we can.
You got 2 of those that are multi-county fire districts. Would you know if either or both of those are, I guess they're making this request of all counties that provide revenue to them?
They are. I do know that both that are multi-counties, they're asking the other counties as well for the increase.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Sharpsburg Fire Association Chief and I talked.
Yes, sir.
He's itemized a lot of reasons why they need this increase, and he has indicated to me that they're asking this of the other counties. So I would be in support of the increase for them as well as the other 2.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the 3 that are asking for an increase have not asked for an increase, as you can see.
Okay.
And so if the board is okay with those 3 requests, if we could go ahead and incorporate that in the budget ordinance, that'd be great. If y'all are okay with it.
Other board members, any questions on these fire district tax rates, particularly the increases? Looks like,
And we're talking about the 3
uh,
that's in blue?
well, they were the ones that have asked for an increase, yes, sir.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. That's correct. And of course, in the process of the budget, you'll be approving all the rates that are shown here.
That is correct.
Appears like you can move forward as you have it.
Thank you.
And you don't need a vote at this time. You'll take care of that in the budget.
All right.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, with 7 taken care of, we will get right into the workshop, as it has been properly renamed this morning, I understand. And we'll go to item number 8, which is Nash County's fiscal year 2021 year-end projections and fiscal year 2022 estimates. Ms. Wood?
Okay, I'm going to change over to the county manager.
Okay.
For the budget officer.
Morning, Mr. Lamb.
Good morning, members of the board. Looking for the right page to take your attention to.
I think it would help us if, when y'all start a new process, if you'd tell us what page we're on, since y'all more familiar with this than we are. I'm assuming we're going to start on page 30?
That is correct.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, sir. Page, I'm going to take this off too. Page 30, 31 is what I'm going to briefly discuss. Before I do that, I'm going to incorporate part of that in a overview of our budget process so far and where we are. First of all, I want to thank the board. It's an honor to be the county manager in Nash County and serve each of the 7 of you and the people of the county. Next, I want to thank our staff, our finance staff particularly, and Stacy, the department heads, for their cooperation and work preparing this proposed preliminary budget. We've still got a lot of work to do. Again, Donna and Melanie and Stacy were part of the budget team, and I appreciate all their hard work. They really have worked hard this year. It's amazing how they put together, and I give them credit for it, this presentation. I again thank the department heads for making reasonable requests for the most part, and very little fluff in the budget. I would like to say that this budget does not include, it has continuation of the same amounts for the public school system and the community college. So we do need to schedule, as we do each year in April, early May, a meeting, a joint meeting with them. We do that usually. The community college goes first, and then we hear from the school system. So at some point, we need to come up with some dates that is acceptable to all of y'all so that we can send over there and and try to arrange that joint meeting. We
did
were
it.
for a while, but the community college one's usually a lot quicker,
Right.
and they always request, can they go first and get out? But it's up to the board. One thing I want to let y'all know about before we start talking too much about this year's budget, and it may necessitate a supplemental budget come July or August, or it may be that we get information before you pass the budget in June. But the American Rescue Plan that passed Congress a couple weeks ago provides over $18 million through different programs, not necessarily cash. We really don't know yet, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but we'll have 4 years to spend that $18+ million. We're expected to get half of it at the end of June, June 24th is the date I've been given. And the other half we will get a year later. We haven't gotten any guidance when they passed the CARES Act last year after COVID hit. they kept changing the guidance. They said what we could do with it, and then they'd change it a little bit and change it some more. So this year, the powers that be have said that they're not going to give us guidance until they know exactly how we can spend the money. We were told that could be another month or two, but last Thursday, I was told it could be this week when we get some guidance on how we can spend that money. I do know that there's money in it for local and state governments, but for local governments, county governments, there may be categorical constraints like water, sewer, internet. So until we get that guidance, we don't know how we can spend that money. As a result, the CARES Act did allow us for the first time in my memory, us to supplant budgeted funds. That's highly unusual, and we're not sure if the American Rescue Plan will allow for supplanting of funds. We did that. We were able to take salaries in the health department, not all of them, but we could have done all of them, but we used CARES money to supplant really, already budgeted matters, which usually, as I said, are not allowed when you get a federal or state grant. You can't use those grant monies to supplant the funds that you've already budgeted and adopted. As a result, last week, Vince and I did add a clause to the CloudWise Phase 3 contract that would allow us to use this money for our match for Phase 3, just to make it clear that that is the source of our match. If it's not available, it won't be available, but if it is available, we've got it in writing. We executed the agreement after adding that, that clause to protect the county and allow us to use that money potentially. Of course, we're now, if you look at this 2 pages here, you can see at the very bottom that based on the requested budgets of all the departments and offices, we are looking at a $12 million request over available revenues, 11.34% increase. We have preliminarily, and we're still making the sausage, so anything that we have here is preliminary and subject to the board's input today and tomorrow, as well as the public input after a public hearing, and the board making any revisions after public hearing in June, and adopting a budget. So what we have done is, to the best of our ability, we have, we're looking at appropriating $4.5 million from fund balance. Last year, I believe we did $3 million for current expense, and we did $811,000 for capital. This year, we're proposing $3 million for current expense and $1.5 for capital. Our capital requests were more than $4.7 million, and we have developed some recommendations should the board want to see what we've come up with. So if you take away that $4.5 million from the 12 million, if you fully funded every request from every department and every office, you would have a $7.5 million additional fund balance appropriated, which I do not believe would be fiscally sound. And that is the equivalent, that 7.5 million is the equivalent of 10-cent tax increase. I know this board has not increased taxes since 2009, and I've detected no interest in doing it at this point. I know I haven't recommended a tax increase in 19 years, so we'll do what we have to do. But because of the uncertainty of the American Rescue money, it's hard to recommend a tax increase. Not only because I know there's not an appetite for it, but because there is so much uncertainty right now with how we can spend that $9 million we're going to get in June over the next few years. I think I said we're getting $9 million now, we're getting $9 million next June, and we have 4 years to spend it all. So it will be like a nice little cushion that we can use, but again, we've got some water needs in the county, phase 2 of Northern Nash Water System. We can use some of that money for phase 2. That would be great. I hope to use some of that money for the internet. There are other capital needs that the board can look at. Health Department building would be one of them, if we can't resolve the current dispute regarding the East Point building. And we do have $2 million in reserve for the Health Department building. So that is something that we may want to look at. Of course, the sheriff always has the federal and state asset forfeiture funds. So I know last year it was $950,000, or 2 years ago, I'm not sure which year. And the board has given him a lot of leeway in how to spend that money. And so some of his requests that are contained in this 12 million deficit could be funded out of those asset forfeiture funds. Again, if we funded all requests, we would be looking at a 10-cent tax rate, and the sheriff's request alone, meaning capital, new positions, raises, operational increases, would be 6 to 7 cent tax increase. I believe we can work through this budget. One thing different from last year is we're allowing this afternoon all the departments that did not like the preliminary cuts that we have made in the operational budget, we're allowing them to come make their case why they should be restored. I would ask you not to weigh in at this time. The time to weigh in really, because we're still massaging those operational budgets. Salaries and benefits are pretty set unless you add additional positions and additional salaries and raises. Capital you're going to be dealing with, but the operational funds in the middle of each budget you'll see, we're still trying to massage them and get them in a situation where we believe we're being reasonable and the increases are reasonable. So what I would ask you is we're going to allow, I think, 4 or 5 different department heads to come in and dispute our preliminary cuts. And again, I say it's preliminary because we're trying to build a budget based on revenues and that we right now anticipate. So we are going to allow them to come in and make their case, but I would ask you that the proper time to amend what we recommend on operational expenditures is after I present the budget in May, you have a public hearing in June, and then you pass the budget ordinance. At that time, you can amend anything I propose prior to passing the budget ordinance. Now, we do ask your input as we've done in recent years, in the years since I've been here, on the request for new positions, salary increases that are beyond my authority of 10%, and capital expenditures. We will incorporate the information and the request or the positions y'all take on these new positions, salary increases, and capital expenditures. We will do our best to incorporate your suggestions in the budget that will be presented in May. This board has really stepped up in the last 3 or 4 years for our employees. You gave 5% 3 years ago. You gave 5% 2 years ago. You gave 3% in October after we got a look at the budget and how things were going. That's 13% over the last 3 years. I would love to do something for our employees. I believe we should do the same for all employees, no matter which department or office. We should treat all employees the same. Y'all have stepped up for all employees over the last 3 years. And every employee in this county has gotten 13% over the last 2.5 years. So I believe y'all have done your part. I would like to see a 2% or 3% increase, even if it's in October or January. I think that based on your past philosophy and your appreciation of the employees of the county, I think that's something most of y'all want to do. But again, we're still making the sausage. So we can't tell you right now, there's no raises in that $12 million. Well, actually, there are raises requested by departments and offices. There's no COLA in that request, in the $12 million. But that's something that we can look at as we go by, as we get guidance from the American Rescue Plan, and we'll be able to make a recommendation at some point. Again, it may be October or January, mid-year, like you did this year, because of uncertainty. But we do not have included in this budget the debt service on the jail renovations. If we were closing by July 1, we would have to put it in there because we would at least have, if we have yearly payments, we'd have one payment, or if we have twice a year payments, we would know the amounts, and we could do the Red Oak School is in here, that debt service is in here. The way that's structured is first 6 months interest only, and then you pay principal plus interest, the second payment. So if that's how the jail is structured, we anticipate closing, since the bids are going out, I believe, in June. They've been delayed, unfortunately. We anticipate the loan to close sometime in July or August. So if we structure it with a 6-month interest payment, we'll have to add from fund balance approximately $400,000 for a 6-month payment. If we structure it with yearly payments, principal and interest, then we will not have to have another payment until the following budget year, if we close in July or August. So that's an uncertainty that we're dealing with, and it's hard to incorporate anything into the budget until we know how that loan is structured. I believe it will be a 6-month interest payment, and we'll have to add to the from the fund balance. So let me say this about this $12 million. Our revenue estimates, as you see here, are based on past methodology. We've made no changes. We've made on some smaller items, we've maybe made projections based on current numbers, but for instance, property tax, ad valorem taxes, we've been using 97.5% collection rate in our projections. And as y'all know, last year we did 99.06. So each percent is about $520,000. We can do that. We can go up to 98.5, but it's a one-time jump. And next year you won't be able to use that, the difference, to offset your fund balance appropriated. One thing we do in this county is we use property tax, the difference between budgeted and the actual, plus lapsed salaries and benefits, plus unused gasoline for departments, plus unspent line items to offset the 4 million or the 4.5 million that we propose at the moment in fund balance appropriated. And we hope that those additional revenues, including sales tax, we use our methodology for sales tax is based on current sales tax collections. And even if the state says we're going to have a 5 or 6 or 7% increase, we don't assume we're going to have that increase because we haven't had that increase. We use actual numbers. So I just want to be totally upfront that these revenues are lower than actual will end up being, but it's the same methodology we've used in the past, the same formulas we've used in the past. So you could probably come up with another $1 million by increasing estimates, but not much more. Our growth as a county, as the chairman reports every meeting, we've seen great growth in Nash County in our tax base over the last couple years, and right now we're looking at about a 3.3% or 3.5% increase in our tax base based on the information provided by the tax office. So that's to our favor also, and that is calculated in our 97.5% collection rate. the 3% growth in our tax base. So you can see we have a lot of challenges. We are looking at unprecedented capital requests. I think I might have said 4.7 million last time I looked at it, and we're suggesting 1.5 million, however y'all want to allocate it, which is more than the 811 I believe we did last year. So this is the biggest deficit that I've ever dealt with, obviously. That would have been in Nash County, but we've got quite a lot of work in front of us, and again, I urge you to understand that there may be other funds coming from the American Rescue Plan that we can use. I don't know if we can supplant salaries and then use that money for raises. I don't know if we can supplant other things. As soon as I get the guidance, or we all get the guidance, which again I was told has been accelerated and we should have sometime this week, which is we appreciate because we are doing our budgets throughout North Carolina and the country. So at this time, I'll answer any questions as far as our outlook and our process.
I got one. These two categories, capital and salary and position request, are where you have, are you going to show us a breakdown of what was requested and
Yes.
what you have approved? Are we going to get that?
Everything.
Okay,
You got that, yep.
It's in here.
Yes.
okay, all right.
Other questions from commissioners? Mr. Outlaw?
I got a comment and a clarification. On the 12 million, did I hear you correct in saying that if all of that was funded, it would increase our tax rate to 77 cents on the 100? You said 10
Yeah,
cents.
that's assuming that we take 4.5 million from fund balance
Right.
as we're proposing.
Based on what's here with that 12 million, it would be a 10
The difference
tax
between
rate.
the 12 million and the 4.5 would be 7.5, which is 10 cents on the tax rate.
Okay. Here's my comment. On the American Rescue dollars, if you used that money, I know you're under certain restrictions as to how you can use that money, but if you use that money for recurring expense items, isn't that just kicking the can down the road?
It's a lot of people say you shouldn't use any fund balance for recurring cost.
My point is this, I don't
Yeah.
want to walk away from here with the impression that we've got $18 million and we can use that money, and we can, for recurring expense. But if we do,
It'll catch up with
it's going to catch up with us at some point.
Right, right.
And
Generally,
that's just something we need to keep in mind.
and I'll make this point, generally, it is recommended that you use fund balance for one-time expenditures, whether that's capital or whatever.
I agree.
Because of the way we structure the budget and are conservative in our revenue estimates, we're able to appropriate $3 million each year from fund balance for operational, and excess revenues, he doesn't like that term, additional revenues above budgeted offsets that $3 million. But you're absolutely right.
Whatever you add recurring is going to be there in 10 years from now.
If you use this money, the American Rescue Plan money, for recurring costs, in 2 or 3 years, it's going to catch up with.
It's like a grant.
Yeah,
When it's gone, it's gone.
it's gone.
And you've still got the expense if it's recurring.
It's gone. And we again, it's a tough budget, and until we know the parameters of the spending of that program, we really can't count on it. That's why I'm saying we may need to just do a base budget with very little capital and expansion this year, and see where we are once we get into the next fiscal year, and then use that American Rescue plans for one-time capital and other needs. Any other questions?
Well, isn't it the American Rescue Plan funds, isn't that money there to bring us out of the shortfalls that we've had during this pandemic, COVID-19?
Yes, yes, that's the theory, and I'll be honest with you, there are many states, many cities, many counties that desperately need that money, and we're not going to refuse that money, but, and I appreciate that we're getting that money.
If we don't use it, then it's going to go to,
That's right.
it's going to go to another.
I would never suggest that we not accept it. But our county, under y'all's leadership, for many, many, many years, long before I was here, we are strong financially. We have a very comfortable fund balance. Our revenues since COVID have been surprisingly positive. Not only did we get the highest tax collection rate in the history of the county during COVID, but sales tax revenues, our two biggest revenue sources, ad valorem taxes and sales taxes, have jumped up. And that's partly because of the Wayfair case that said that mail order vendors had to collect sales tax and distribute it to the states and counties and cities.
I've been observing here in Nash County, particularly in Rocky Mount, I can see people are really shopping now.
Yeah.
And the sales taxes, to me, it's going to look good.
Continue to go up.
Yeah.
What I was saying was during March, April, May, June of last year, and even up to today, sales tax revenues did not fall off like we anticipated, because people weren't going out and weren't shopping. They were going online and ordering stuff from Amazon and other vendors. We were collecting that money, and that money was being sent to the Department of Revenue, and then the Department of Revenue has been sending it out to cities and counties. So the intuitive response to COVID was that we would have a dip in our collections, in our tax collections. Didn't happen. Now, that might have been because it didn't start until March, and taxes are due in January, so 96, 97, 98% of the taxes had already been collected. If that had happened in November or October, we might have had a different situation. But our two biggest tax sources, property tax and sales tax, have come in much higher. But again, there are counties, there are states, there are cities that have truly suffered revenue-wise, so that's what I think the American Rescue Plan was targeted towards, and they wanted to give it to everybody.
Well, another angle that I'm looking at with this American Rescue Plan fund, if we use that money in our fund balance can draw interest, and when this money here runs out, we can pick it up.
Well, the problem is, right now, we're getting about 0.05% in interest on our money. We're budgeting for next year, I believe, less than $100,000 in interest income, when that's been 10 times that or more in past years. So unless we get higher interest rates, which means we have to pay more for borrowed money, we're not going to be able to get much interest on those funds. But you're right, we will, once we receive those monies in June, we will put it in an interest-bearing account, probably the state treasurer's funds. We have to spend it in 4 years. So there's not going to be a whole lot of interest that we accrue over the next 3 or 4 years unless interest rates increase in the near future. But again, I can't give you too much advice on that until we get the guidance
Well, these are
from
some
the
things-
feds.
Some things we can look at.
Yeah,
And it doesn't bother me if we shop around for the highest interest rate.
oh, we do.
Now, some don't like that, and I've seen some finance directors that shift monies where they can get a higher interest rate, and some didn't like it, and especially financial institutions.
Right, right.
But
Yeah,
it was a big help to the municipality that did it, that I'm familiar with.
the spread between the various sources of investment right now is very small, probably 5 or 10 basis points, or 0.1% in interest rates. We're also, as a government entity in North Carolina, we are highly restricted on how we can invest our funds. We can do commercial paper, we can do the state treasurer's capital management fund, I believe it's called. We can't invest in stocks. We can't invest in any kind of speculative type investments. We can only do certain types of investments that have been approved by the state.
Other commissioners have a comment, question at this time?
Let me see.
Sure, Mr. Anderson.
Good morning. Well, I want to say that as far as the CARES Act, that I'm sure that smart as our staff is, we're going to find a way, our county manager, to use all the money that will come to this county through the CARES Act.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to reoccurring expenses, I hope, we be innovative with that as far as, okay, if it goes for 4 years, then we can fund something for 4 years and it ends. That'll be so-called a recurring expense, but we know that it can't go past 4 years or whatever. But I just hope that we be innovative as far as, once we learn all the rules, that we can do the right thing to help our county, because there's all kind of projects and things that need to be done here in Nash County. So let's keep a positive attitude about that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I can tell you, between staff and myself, we have tried to be very innovative, and we try to stretch every dollar we can. Of course, as y'all know, you can only spend $1 one time. In fact, you'll be presented with, I guess, the water restructuring is for next Monday?
That's correct.
Yeah. We have actually, Central Nash, if I may go into that just for a second, so y'all know this background too. Central Nash has 6 different loans. Central Nash Water and Sewer. system.
First one we did.
The first one, the county did back in '08, '09, I think it was. The interest rates on those loans are anywhere from, I believe, about 3% to 4-something%. We have gone out and gotten, and they go as far out as 2054, so another 30-some years. We have gone out and gotten proposals that we will present next Monday that allows us to pay off all 6 USDA loans and do a 20-year financing for the entire $10 or $11 million. And for the first few years here, it'll be about $80,000, $75,000 more than we're currently paying in debt service. But after 20 years, that loan will be paid off, and there will be a savings to the county of over $5 million. So what we have to make sure is that we have the revenues coming in that will pay for that additional thing, but that additional amount of debt service. We will present that on Monday. We got a rate of, I believe, 2.2 for 20 years and 2.07 for 15 years. 15 years would have required us to spend about $250,000 more a year. So what we're recommending is a 20-year loan. And in the back end, those last 14 years that we would have been paying debt service, we're doing something for our grandchildren. Too often, government finances things on the backs of their grandchildren and their children. We're doing the opposite. We're upfronting some of that money, saving money in the end, and getting that system out of debt in 20 years instead of 34 years. So that's an example of staff being very innovative on our finances. But thank you.
Back to the budget. Other commissioners have comments? Keep us on track. Questions? Mr. Lamb, just a couple. The $12 million that you spoke about is a number that I don't recall us even coming close to approaching in years past, and that would be a 19-year span in my particular case. What is it that got us, what do you see that's changed this year from our request that got us to such a large number, whereas before, I think, I'm just amazed that it got that high. Did it all come from different directions or a single direction? And I really don't want you to answer it in that, but just overall, what made us be so far out of bounds to start with? Because you're actually doing the budget presentation a little different than what we have been doing. And I think when we get through, I personally will be fine with it. But I feel like I know less at this point than I've ever known, which is okay. I can catch up quick. But I'm just amazed at that $12 million number.
That $12 million is based on funding every request that's come in to the county. The next column is what we have preliminarily.
I understand what you got here, but that number normally has been in the $3 to $6 million range in past budget years.
The source of 2/3 of it is a single office.
I didn't ask the question like I really want to get the answer, because I don't want it to go there particularly.
Me neither.
Yet, but what bothers me, have we underfunded some stuff to get us to this point that's made us need to do a lot of catching up this year? Is that part of the issue, is my real concern?
We have gotten more requests for new positions than we've ever had. I've always tried to hold the line on new positions. I think this year we've gotten more requests for new positions from multiple departments.
Right.
We've gotten like I said, 4.7 million in capital requests. That's more than we've ever had. We've had some salary adjustments, requests that are in the 20% range for a couple budgets. We've got Red Oak Elementary School, new debt service coming online. I wouldn't say that we've held anything back in prior years. What I would say is that 5% plus 5% plus 3% is a lot of increase over the last 3 years in salaries but for that, our situation would be a little better. When you consider each percent is probably almost $400,000 on the budget, so 400 times 13, that's part of it. But that money went to our employees, and they're well deserving of that. But it's a combination of things.
Well, it becomes evident that when you say it that way, the $12 million, we really got to be careful what part of that may be reoccurring. Because the pyramid that you just talked about will continue on if we were to approve anywhere near the $12 million and say 90% of it is reoccurring. It just continues to eat at you. So
We feel comfortable recommending no more than $3 million for operational and $1.5 million for capital increases. And if you figure those numbers in, you see where we are. We have a budget we can finesse.
Gotcha. The CARES Act that Mr. Outlaw talked about,
The CARES Act was last year's. You mean the American Rescue?
rescue,
Yeah.
yes. Got so much money coming, I forget the names of them. But we certainly got to, when you get those guidelines, figure out a way that we utilize every dime of the money so it's not reoccurring, as Mr. Outlaw suggested, because, and you talked about what we are doing is helping our grandchildren when we restructure debt. But on the other hand, what we're doing with American Rescue, our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren are going to need that help that we're giving them to catch us back up from what we're also doing with the left hand or the right hand, however you want to look at it. But of course, that's out of this board's control, and we'll just have to deal with what comes to us. I certainly hope we can work it so we can do, and you said, I think, that the $12 million number that we started with, or the 4.5 million that y'all got it down to, still doesn't include anything for our employees.
That's correct.
Okay.
And each percent, because we get some reimbursement from the state for social services and
About
health,
$400,000.
is about, I'd say 350 to 400,000. It used to be 300, but then we added the 5, and
Right.
3.
Understand. Well, that's why I said 400,000.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like what we've got to do as we get the presentations moving forward is this board has got to basically sit and listen to everybody, make no obligations during the next couple of days, and then let y'all have it back and continue to work at it until we see it again. I don't see how we can make obligations, particularly until you get your rescue money and see how you can utilize that. And of course, as you and I discussed the other day, there may be even additional more of that coming through the state.
From the
state's
state,
gonna
yes,
do.
I forgot to.
We don't know what that's going to be, but certainly some more.
And that's federal money coming to the state that they're going to
State.
then give to
The county.
local governments.
That's correct. So that could be another rather significant pot of funds, but they all, as we know, are going to have some kind of guidelines and restrictions on them, and we certainly got to make sure we follow those. But yet do it in such a way that it's not reoccurring expenses. I don't envy y'all's job in deciphering all that, quite frankly.
Two comments. I suspect the state, any state pass down would be a typical non-supplant requirement, so that we couldn't use that money to supplant things already budgeted. Again, on the American Rescue Plan, we don't know if it's going to be like CARES or not like CARES. We'll have to see. Given the enormity of the request for new positions and capital, as we have done last year, we do welcome your input. After you hear it all, I think the way y'all have done it in the past is you hear all the capital requests, and then you sit down and you decide which ones you can fund. And so we would appreciate that input, because when we're looking at 1.5 and we got 4.7 million, we would prefer the elected officials to assist us in making those choices. But we have recommendations on the capital side. The staff has come up with 1.5 million in spending. Now, again, there's nothing magical about 1.5 million. Last year it was 811. You could do 2 million. You could do 1 million. We have, in order to be consistent with prior years and to balance our budget, we have come up with recommendations on the capital side of $1.5 million in spending.
Is it possible to take the $18 million based on the number you give us earlier? We could possibly reduce our tax rate about 21, 22%. Is that possible? We can consider.
Actually, there is a provision in the American Rescue Act that if you accept these funds, you cannot reduce your tax rate.
For real? Mm-hmm. No matter what?
I mean, I didn't see the final bill, but I know at some point it was.
Does that say you can't reduce it based on the utilization of those funds, or you just can't reduce it, period?
You can't, unless you're doing a revow. I don't think you can use those funds to reduce your tax rate.
Okay.
Well, that would catch up with you in a few years, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure will.
An old manager saying is, don't ever get, once you get that 1 cent, 2 cent, 3 cent increase, don't ever give it up. You'll never get it back.
I got a question in preparing my mind for what we're probably going to hear about raises and stuff. Is all our, have we given everybody Nash County standard? I know we're probably going to hear that other counties do different things, but at our standard, is everybody in every department probably got all the merit raises and everything? I call them merit raises based on qualifications or been to school, or are we where we're supposed to be as far as our standards are concerned with everybody? We hadn't held back anything.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Now, we've been doing COLAs over the last few years.
Right.
We haven't been doing merit. When I am authorized by our budget ordinance and by our personnel policy to give up to 10% or 2 steps increases for existing or new employees. I can start somebody at 10%. If a new employee comes, I can start them at the request of the department or office. I can start them up to 10% above the minimum. At any time, any department head or officer can come to me and ask for a merit increase of up to 10%. And I generally, if it's justified, I usually, I want some justification, and sometimes they might ask for 10, and I give them 7 because they got the other 3. I've done that recently.
That's the way it should be, because we as the board don't know what level a individual employee is performing at,
Right.
with the exception of just a handful.
Right.
But the manager needs to have that latitude, and I think you've used it
Yeah,
wisely.
I was just wondering if during this pandemic time we had held back, if there's anything there we should know about before we get these presentations.
Yeah, let me say this. Our methodology on our when we do analysis on salaries, we try our very best to not skew any numbers, not to survey 15 counties and then only use 2 or 3 counties to make our point and do away with the ones that don't help us. We've been requested recently to do 2 studies by 2 commissioners, and we're recommending that in the next year we do another salary study for the entire county, not for one part of the county, not for one office in the county, not for one department in the county, but do them throughout. And when we do these studies, I can tell you that Annis and Kirkland and our staff does them in a very professional way, without skewing numbers, without trying to get a result and to reach our hypothesis. We do it in a very professional way. And I'll stand by Anderson's work. Most recently.
That's why I specified according to Nash County standards, is everybody where they should be, or have we not?
Well,
did anything because
we have not done a salary study overall for the county in about 5 or 6 years. But, and I think we need one. They say you should have one every 5 years. I think we did one in 14, so it's almost 7 years. The rule of thumb is you need to do one every 5 or 6 years. But I will say that if we fell behind over the last 3 years, most salaries are up. We've got social workers, and we've got DSS workers, and we've got employees that aren't making enough money. But y'all did 5%, 5%, and 3%. We've got detention officers that I'm sure the sheriff wants to make more money. But you guys have, and ladies, have stepped up and done what you can. But it's always good every once in a while, periodically, to bring an outside consultant in, and not the same one every time, but different ones, and get them to look at the salaries of the various departments and offices. But again, the small analysis we've done in the last month, at the request of 2 of the commissioners, are absolutely, I stand by them, even though I didn't do them. I trust Mr. Anderson, Kirkland, and I believe that he did apples and apples in his analysis, and did everything he could based on what I suggested, and based on what was asked of me, and we stand by those analyses. You'll see them, I suspect, later tomorrow or today or sometime.
Just one other comment, Mr. Chairman, and I'm hesitant to even bring it up, but if you've got American Rescue dollars that you are required to use for salaries, then a possible option, rather than recurring, would be to give a one-time bonus. We've done that in the past,
Yes.
rather than setting yourself up with a recurring situation that would necessitate a significant increase in your tax rate. Just a comment.
That is a great point that I think some of y'all have probably thought about, and we've thought about it. And when you talk about the health department and EMTs, and those people that have been on the front line with COVID, it would be nice to give them a one-time thank you.
Well, I'm tending to say a one-time increase bonus would be across the board.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause when you start what you're saying, I don't know where you stop at.
Yeah, that's true. That's my concern, that if you,
But this place has been open the whole time.
Well, in the
Yeah.
big picture, everybody's essential. Some maybe more so than others, but everybody's essential.
yeah. Again, on the salary study, I do believe that in the next year, it would be good, and you'll get a presentation from Anison, I believe, on that. It's no one department that should be addressed. It should be countywide. You know, if you're going to look at this department, you need to look at all the departments.
As a precursor to something like that, just me, I'd recommend that maybe you compare Nash County to comparable counties around us and beyond us before you do an overall study.
Right. Well, we'll get into the small studies we've done in response to requests when that is on the calendar, yeah.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
my question would be, if we use that money for a one-time bonus, could the employees have a discretion of taking that one-time bonus and putting it into their retirement plan?
Sure. Absolutely.
Always do that.
Well,
As long as they don't go over the yearly maximum,
yeah,
and they wouldn't.
well, that might be a good idea for them to know that, rather than just taking that one-time bonus and head to the store or wherever and spend it. Because it would pay off.
I just remembered one thing I would like to add, and that is on this American Rescue Plan, which is really was created in response to COVID. We've got 21, 22 ambulances, and I'm hoping that some of that money can be used to purchase some more COVID-friendly ambulances with better ventilations and things like that might help. I think we got a request for 2 ambulances, and we kept one in. Is that correct?
Haven't made any kind of official recommendation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We haven't made any official recommendation there yet. But if we can't use that money, it may be, every once in a while, this board, I don't think since I've been here, but y'all would buy 3 or 4 or 5 ambulances and finance it over 4 or 5 years. That might be an option we can do this year or next year if we can't use the American Rescue Plan money. I'm hopeful that we can use some of that money to buy some additional ambulances, which, as y'all know, are running with the hydraulic lifts about $210,000, $211,000 each.
You also might be able to find the technology which is out there to decontaminate these vehicles rather than continuing to corrode these vehicles with these chemicals that they use for cleaning.
That's true.
We've recommended that at least twice.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Keep us moving along, if there's no other questions from Mr. Lamb. Just give us, I'm a little bit nervous the way we've structured this thing, but I'm sure it's going to be fine. This afternoon, when the department heads start coming in and talking about where the staff put them and where they want to be. How do we react to that? Do we just listen and we don't make comments until y'all finish? Is that what y'all got in mind? I'm asking for direction.
Well, this is the first time we've ever used this
I know
method.
that. I'm very aware of that.
And
It might be the first, go ahead, sir.
I would ask you, unlike capital and new positions, not to direct us to do anything that's requested, because we are still,
I don't see how we can.
Yeah.
That's my point.
yeah, we're still
That's what
massaging.
your expectation is for us to not give any directions today, listen and continue to let y'all work, and then you'll come back with us for something
Right.
and make some changes if you see fit.
Right, and there's a couple things that have been put on the agenda, like adult detention dollars and juvenile detention dollars. Last year, the sheriff asked for 3.4 million. We cut it to 800,000, and it's going to be less than 800,000. This year, he asked for an amount that we have cut in both those line items. But the fact is, it is what it is. If
We
we
understand.
have people in other facilities, if we have people at Central Prison Hospital, we have to pay that money. So we don't want to have $3 million just sitting there that's never going to be used, taking up money that could be used somewhere else. So that's what happened last year. This year, we have made what I would call reasonable adjustments. But in the final analysis, if next May or June, we run out of that line item and we don't have other line items to pull that money from, we'll have to do a budget amendment.
Well, we got numerous ones of those line items. don't we?
Yeah,
Did it last month, the attorney fees. If we give out of money,
that's right.
Vince hadn't volunteered to work for nothing yet, and so you gotta, we understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good point, though.
But again, you can anytime move money in operations. So you got salaries and benefits, you've got capital, and all those line items in the middle there. I have the authority to move from one to another line item. So when somebody says, I need 10,000 more here, well, in June of next year, we'll have 10,000 somewhere in that budget that we can move over there. Thank you.
Is that all we are doing under 8, or have you got more to do, Ms. Wood?
Ms. Wood? More detail?
Well, actually, so under 8, the county manager addressed the requested and what we have in the recommended. That's a draft recommendation. That's currently where we are, and the whole point of the workshop is just to let the board know where we are in the budget process at this point, and to hear the considerations, what we're looking at as far as coming up with the final recommendation. And as you listen to our department heads today and tomorrow when they request additional items from the continuation budget, or salary requests, or position requests, or capital requests, as you consider it, we could get some direction from you on how to complete the recommended budget for proposal, and what our current draft recommendation actually includes. The other thing that I wanted to point out as far as the item for number 8 is in the recommended column, or the draft recommendation, what we did, and the reason it's a little bit different this year in the format, is when we went through with the continuation budgets with the requested, as always, the county manager and staff, we sat down and we cut some of the items that we thought we could probably live with based on conversation and historical information. And we wanted to give the department heads an opportunity who felt like they needed to come back and they needed a little bit more, so they could present that to the commissioners and you could hear that and maybe after consideration and time to think about it, we could get some direction on how to include that if we need to work with us on trying to come up with the recommended budget. As far as the capital, the $1.5 million, as we were working with Davenport on our financial direction of where we want to go, we would say in there that each year we'd consider doing a pay-go capital of $1.5 million. And so in order to stay with that, and these are things that we presented to the LGC when doing, when going out for financing with the school and other things in our presentation. So we wanted to try to stay in that area of 1.5 million. And so in looking at all the requests, which you can tell are much larger than they have been in the past, we've tried, as we said, we have a semi-recommendation that we haven't presented because we wanted, again, for the board to hear everything and to sort of take that back, and as we're listening to it, how we move forward with the direction. But we were trying to stay in that area of 1.5 million, just so we could stay in line with what we've presented and what our plan is for the future. Again, it's difficult. And as far as salary and position requests, we just didn't put any in at this point. We wanted the board to hear what the commissioners, we wanted the board to hear the departments and why they were requesting. And at some point, maybe we could get a general idea of the board's direction and your focus that would help us complete a recommended budget. And we've done the same thing with the next item that's on the agenda for outside agencies and our funding partners. We've taken their requests, they're in the requested column, and we've put together a recommendation. Now, that doesn't mean where we'll end up with the recommended budget, but we wanted to present it to you with our outside agencies that are requesting and say, this is what we're looking at, and this is what we're considering. And at some point, for the board to hear this information and to look at what they're requesting. And if there is a direction that the board is interested in, we could consider changing our recommendations. And but again, we're as the chairman was asking, what are the expectations? The expectation is just for you to hear what's happening, where we are right now in the budget process, and for consideration. And then I don't know if we have another budget meeting or budget workshop to get some direction on where to go.
Yeah, we want to make sure that what we put in the final recommended budget is what the commissioner's priorities reflect. Reflect what the commissioner's priorities are. And in the past, we have come back and had another budget meeting. Sometimes, some years we have, some years we haven't, so.
Just trying to prepare us and understand, we got here this morning and we were given this book. But when these department heads come in starting this afternoon, are they going to be going over capital plus what they asked for outside of capital, or are we going to do one part today and capital tomorrow? How you got that part?
Today, it's operational.
Operational is
Cuts that we've made.
okay. So it will not be capital day, so that
That's
we'll
tomorrow.
see some department heads twice.
Right.
That helps a little bit, I think, for us to understand it. But,
Capital and new positions will be tomorrow.
okay, so, and you're saying there are no new positions in what we're looking at for the 4.5 billion fund balance?
That is correct.
Okay, no new positions.
No new positions, no position reclassifications.
Okay, well, I really, myself, and I may be the slowest one up here, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. But I think we're going to need to have you to, before the next thing, I'd like to see you go through how quickly you can each department and kind of outline, rather than, we're just staring at a bunch of numbers, and we can't, I just can't quite get it quite that fast. But could you walk us through each department after a 10-minute break and tell us what each department asked for? I mean, I know it's here, but I'd like to see you just breeze through.
Sure.
Ask for it in the operational or ask for it in all of the
No,
items?
operational, if that's what we're doing today. We can do the same thing tomorrow with capital.
Sure.
But I'd like to have a little bit of understanding before a guy walks up here or a lady and asks for something.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to correlate between what y'all did and so forth. Do y'all feel that way?
Well,
Well-
I got a comment
Sure.
on that subject. I
Yeah.
think to prevent a back and forth today
Yeah.
that could potentially get contentious, and we
Yeah.
don't want that, I think I would like to listen to their request, and then I would like for the county to provide some written logic as to why you felt that request should be lower. For example, you just mentioned adult and juvenile detention. Now, if that's not told, if you don't know that, then you think it's a reasonable request. You're saying on that detention situation, we got to pay it anyway. It's like coroner cost. I mean, every year we get an amendment to pay additional coroner fees.
Yep.
So it's something we got to pay anyway, so why should you lay that money there all year if you don't need it until later in the year? And I don't even know if you lay that money there, is it available to be pulled and used for other things within the department?
We restrict that,
Okay.
we
Well, I
restrict
just-
that
I just think-
particular line item.
I just think we need to know what their requests are that were not funded.
Yeah.
And your logic why they're not funded. It doesn't have to be a book.
Yeah.
Just a brief explanation. And
Yeah.
that juvenile
That's certainly
detention
helpful.
thing was, you gave a very reasonable explanation for that.
It's in here, and we can do it either before or after.
I think after on that part, like Mr.
Make
Outlaw
their
said.
presentation.
But here it is first. But I would like to see
Yeah,
what y'all did before they get before us.
yeah, and I know you haven't had a chance to look at it, but it's in here. The request today for operational request, again, that does not include capital or new positions. What that is individual line items that have been cut down for one reason or another. So that's we've done it, let's say throughout the entire budget, we cut the line item request 200 times through all the budgets. What you have here is 20 of them. 20 line item cuts that we made that Donna gave each of the department heads an opportunity to be heard.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just as an example, I'm pretty sure that when you give us that information, that there will be a request from Parks and Rec for additional staffing.
There is.
Because of the Cooper's Park.
That's right.
And that may be a valid request, it probably is. But is that a request that, to be innovative, that you could potentially accommodate through a contract, part-time employee? Something that reduced the total amount that you would be committing yourself to, but would still get the job done.
Right.
I mean, just things like that.
Well, I can tell you that
Why, reasons why you didn't see the need to fund it, and maybe some options to cover it if you think there's a need for it.
and I can tell you, I think, Jonathan is in here. He has used that method of contracting out landscaping
Yeah.
rather than hiring additional people. We've got a mix, but we've moved away from having employees doing landscaping, and we've gone towards a contract system where you don't have to pay benefits and other costs.
Well, I came from manufacturing, and when I left Abbott Laboratories, we had 10% of our people were contracts, and they were doing everything. So I'm not saying that's the right way to go, but I'm saying on a limited basis, it might satisfy a need at a much reduced cost.
Right, it's a mix.
Yep.
Usually, you need a mix.
Mr. Belfield?
I noticed you mentioned, Don, that no personnel increase up to this point. I'm thinking about COVID-19. in doing the vaccination, that there's two departments, in my observation, what I've been observing, are being overworked, and fatigue can sit in. If we don't hire full-time people, we need to do, in my opinion, at this time, and it looks like cases are rising here locally, as well in about 18 other states across the nation, that we need to make sure that our people are not overworked and fatigue set in. I'm picking it up, I'm observing it,
You're right.
and I've gotten some comments on it too.
Yeah.
So we need to look at it. And another thing is that, can they get some help from some of the other departments?
They are.
A lot of that going on.
Yeah, let me address that comment. You're absolutely right. I can't imagine those people at the health department and what they've gone through over the last year. First, it was testing, testing, testing. Now it's vaccination, vaccination, vaccination. And
they don't get no lunch hour.
And they have been working 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, doing that. But there's also the emergency management folks. They help with the clinics. So every time there's a clinic, they're out there. Senior staff. Our 2 senior centers are closed right now, and we probably won't open again until July or August. Those people are working full-time with the vaccination project. Parks and Rec, they were helping a lot more in the beginning of the vaccinations, but they've got their own responsibilities with programs this spring and summer. So you're absolutely right. We are, our staff, our maintenance staff, you know, when the virus first came, they had to really step it up and try to sterilize everything they could, you know, all the time, and they are still doing that. And so it's been a lot of work for a lot of people, and I know y'all appreciate it based on what you've told me in the past, but
Oh, yeah.
it's just, it's unprecedented. You know, we none of us lived through the Spanish flu, and so, but our staff has stepped up to the plate, and I appreciate it so much.
I'm gonna go ahead and call for a 10-minute recess, and when we come back, we'll get that 66-word analysis of the changes y'all did on your current expenses, operating. What do we call it in here? Current expenses at the school, what do you call it? Operating expenses?
Operating.
Thank you. We'll be back in about 10, 15 minutes.
up on the request. And discuss. So if you're on page 205, the first section that we have, so what we have in the first section is the amount of funds that, so I have the sheriff on the list first with the sheriff's office department, and he's requesting back from the requested to our draft recommendation, he's asking for $293,701 back into the draft recommended budget. And so what we provided for you here are the line items that he's asking for funds back. And he will speak to each one of these this afternoon and tell you again why the dollar was requested. And then Commissioner Outlaw has asked that we provide something to the departments and to the commissioners of why we made the cuts. And I think that's my understanding of the request. The next on the list is with our school resource officer.
And let me say that the entire budget for each of these departments is earlier, right? Well,
Right.
not the entire budget, but the summary of the budget.
Right, so behind the general fund summary, there's the revenue summary, and then there's the departmental summaries, and that's broken down by salary and benefits, other operating, professional services, so you can kind of see in categories where the spending is by department.
Starting on page 41.
Well, if you look on 205 and you look at above the 293 that's being requested below and above, it's got, for most of these, it says no specific item was specified.
Right,
So does that mean that the budget was just increased by that amount or added by that amount with no specific reason? Just
No, that's our terminology. So for example, with, when they asked for us to put, when they wanted to come and present to the commissioners for the items to possibly get put back in, they didn't really give us a specific item that they would be addressing. And so there is budget detail, for example, with uniforms. I believe it's something with some new uniforms with the sheriff's office, supplies.
So
Again,
when
I'm
they
not-
present, they'll have some explanation.
Right, they would
Okay.
justify why they want that money
Okay.
back in the budget.
Reasonable.
You're just saying they didn't give it to you.
That is
They're gonna
correct.
give it to us. Okay.
Right, that doesn't
It
mean
is
they didn't
confusing.
detail it out.
Right, I got you.
Right.
And let me say on travel and training, I didn't say this earlier, every single budget in the entire county was cut in half for travel and training. COVID, we've seen a lot less travel, a lot more Zoom and Teams meetings, and there was a lot of money not spent this year so far, and we just feel like we had to make some cuts, and that was one that we felt like we could do.
You don't feel like travel's
Train.
going to start back and people are going to start going to meetings pretty soon?
Again, if they do, they don't spend every dollar in the other operational line items, so we'll be able to move money around to accommodate any additional travel that isn't funded.
We don't have to travel for the training, that can be done online or
Right.
through
And stu-
Zoom.
And I believe the new normal will be a lot more team and Zoom and WebEx meetings online instead of getting in your car and going to Chapel Hill or Raleigh or Greensboro. It'll be done at your desk.
And so the next item requested again is with the sheriff's office. It's the school resource officer training. He's requesting $3,000 back. if you flip the page to 206, the jail, the sheriff will be asking $179,400 back in his budget. And you can see what we did, we put in those line items, and you can see what was requested, and then the draft recommendation of where the cuts were, and that's, they're asking for the money back. Then the next is also with the sheriff's office, court liaison. They're requesting $10,650 back into their budget.
What are EQMP? What does
They
that mean?
are the electronic monitoring
That they put on the
fees.
inmates?
They do, right.
Okay.
And so actually, again, I have scheduled for the April 5th meeting, they need additional money in that line item, but we're not sure year by year how many they'll have that will have these fees. So we look at estimates from prior years.
And that's one of those things that if you have to have it, you have to pay for it.
Absolutely.
For example, last year, we spent $35,000. They requested 50, and we went down to 40 based on last year's total. We still gave them a $5,000 increase.
But the next item.
So again, when you look at these cuts, it's the cut against the requests, not the cut against last year's budget or the prior year actual.
Got it.
The next item that will come before us, or the next person, is Jonathan Boone, and he requested, in addition to his continuation budget, he had requested some semi-annual maintenance on the HVAC systems, and this is just in addition to the continuation budget, and we wanted to bring that before the board. So we did not include that in the recommended. It was part of his requested, and so that's something that he wanted to bring before the board to talk about why he thought that was necessary. The next item is with our IT department, or MIS department. So Sandy Vick will be presenting. She's requesting $6,160 back in professional services. And then within the technology department, she's requesting $14,000. The next section is with Brian Brantley, Fire and Rescue, or Brent Fisher or Brian Brantley. With Fire and Rescue, they're requesting some additional services and fees with Momeyer, Coopers and Bailey and Stony Creek. It's a different setup that they wanted to talk about. This actually wasn't in the requested budget, but they would like for it to be considered in the operational, and so they wanted to bring this to the board. The next item is with Brian Brantley with EMS, and he's requesting $45,732. The original request that he had did not include $12,726, but they added that in, I think, along with the rescue services. But again, that's a new request that wasn't part of the requested, but $33,456 was cut that he would like to add back.
And if I may, some of these perhaps should not have be brought to y'all, like the $6,160. In the course of a year, if we need $6,160, we can find it. But we sent out an email saying, if you object to any of the recommendations by staff, let us know, and the decision was made to bring it before y'all today. Pretty much all of them can be finessed through current budgets, I would say, except perhaps, well, all of them could be finessed through the current budgets.
So that's what we have, I believe, 4 departments that will be presenting for operational requests. Does that help?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like I was sick before break, and now I feel great again. I mean, because I understand what's going to happen, and it's not near the magnitude of what I thought it was going to be. I'm good.
Okay.
Other questions from commissioners? I think we're good.
And again, this is the part that I said that we're bringing it to you for the first time in the budget process. We haven't done this in the past, and we're just letting them specify or justify their increases in operational costs. I would say, again, that we are still crafting the budget, and if you start telling us to do this or not doing that on these kind of things, you're tying our hands as far as being able to come up with a budget in the end. Thanks.
You ready to move to item 9 then?
I am.
And what page does that start on?
So item 9 starts on page, actually, it officially starts on page 55.
55. Okay.
Just the introduction of it. But on page 57, we have 5-year history of our outside agency requests and funding and our funding partners. And so what we have here, and behind this information is their request, so you can read how they're using their funds, what they've actually requested, their board members, the things that they have provided to Nash County Finance Office. So the first one, the first request, and again, let me just say with that recommended funding, it is a draft and a starting point for conversation in addition to the requested. So this in no way reflects where we will end up. It's just, it's sort of a starting point of getting something down for a draft recommendation to go, to move forward with that column. So,
And as in the past, if y'all have, if there's 4 of y'all that want to change our recommendation, you can let us know now and we'll incorporate it in the final budget.
So just to go through, I'll go through each one and just sort of tell you what they've requested and what we put in the recommended column. So Tri-County Industries, they requested $42,000, the same as in prior years. You can see the history. So we have recommended the $42,000. Nash Arts Council, again, the same thing. They requested $30,000, recommended $30,000. Boys and Girls Club, they requested $30,000. We have in there $12,500. As we did in the current year, we have funded them $25,000 in prior years. And
17, 18, yeah.
And so what we did last year, because in 2017, or 2018, we funded in advance the 21st Century Arc implementation at the southern end of the county. And that was an additional $25,000, and it was agreed that we would reduce the funding allotment in future years based on the implementation of that project. And so this year, we reduced our funding allocation to get some of that back, and it was my understanding that we would do the same for 2022, and then we'd move forward with funding as funding without trying to recoup that money after 2022.
I got a question.
Sure.
Under Boys and Girls Club, you got $30,000, what I'm seeing here, and you said you reduced that to 12.5. Where's the 12.5 figure in here at?
In the recommended, so if you look,
First dollar.
We were doing
Okay,
25.
all right, I got you. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
so if you look in the agency requested, that's what they requested. And then, again, it's a draft recommendation. So we have in there, again, the $12,500, and that would fully recoup the advance that we did for them. United Community Ministries, they requested 30.
Yeah, something on that.
Sure.
That just seems like to me that one has been longer ago than 2 payments, but you sure we hadn't already got it all back?
No, we didn't. We delayed it a year. They requested that we not start taking it out for
first
another year.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It just seems like it's been
Yeah, it does.
longer ago than that.
Right.
Just make sure we not charge them a whole lot of interest.
No, so as you can see, if you look back at the history, it was fiscal year 2017, 2018 when we advanced them the $25,000.
Right.
And then in 2019, they received the $25,000, in 2020, $25,000. You know, that's, again, we can discuss recoupment and other funding, how the, you know, if we could get some direction on the board or comments or priorities, that would be helpful just to, for us.
Yeah, they're asking for 30,000 this year.
Right.
And we're funding them based on prior year requests and allocations. Nothing prevents the board from giving them that extra 5,000 or all 30,000 for that matter, but,
But as long as we got our years right, I'm fine.
yeah.
United Community Ministries requested 30,000, and that's what we funded in prior years, and so it's, in the recommended column, we have 30,000. Downey's Partnership requested 10,000. We recommended the 10,000. Spalding Center, they requested 36,000 in the current year. In the current year that we're in, 2021, we made some changes to our outside agency applications, and part of it is if you receive over 25,000, you really need to have a full audit, and also look at the funding sources, and we were recommending that Nash County not be your primary funding source, that you have other funding sources. And so last year, we dropped where we had been funding the Spalding Center 40,000, we took them just below the $25,000 limit to 24,000.
So this reduction is because they need to be audited?
Well, there were two things. They didn't have a formal audit, and they were receiving over $25,000. And also, Nash County was their primary funding source. They didn't really have any other, they really didn't have any large funders. I mean, I would say we were over 75% of their funding.
They're not actively getting other funding sources. I know Spring Hope, they used to get money from them, and they stopped funding them. They're not actively seeking grants that we can see. So we don't, the idea is we don't want them just relying on the county and only the county to fund their operations.
And actually,
That been expressed to the board? All right.
and the other part of that is we met with them, Lisa and myself, a number of years ago when we started the Southern Nash Senior Center. And we felt like eventually that operation would be encumbered into this senior center, but that really hasn't happened. And we kind of indicated at that point that the funding that we would give them would eventually end up with the senior center, but we, I guess, kind of cut the middle of that somewhat. It was projected that the funding would go away completely, but when we put the senior center down there, but we haven't done that. But we have directed, that was another cause for it being reduced some over the years.
But did that have anything to do with this specific Spalding program? I know we talked about Nash Senior Centers, that maybe some of the activities there at Spalding,
Right.
they could move down there, but
Correct.
one thing I heard from them, that seniors' transportation is something they need to get down there. You're talking about, what, about 10 miles?
I did hear that some, Mr. Bell felt that, some of them felt it was too far. I think Stacy could probably answer that question better than anybody else could.
Yes, that's true. That's what some of the comments have been. We can provide transportation to the center like we do using Tar River Transit to the Nashville Senior Center. We can provide transportation to that center, but for people who drive, they have complained about the distance.
So are they using the Tar River Transit for transporting people in the Spring Hope area down to the senior center?
Not yet. We hadn't started that program, and then COVID hit, and we've been closed for a year, so. But we do have the ability to do that.
Okay.
Christian Fellowship requested $6,860. That's what we put in the recommended based on the history. Highway 1764 Association, we have that within our economic development. We funded them $14,000 over the, you can look at the history over the last 5 years. And
for the record, that was something I recommended in the beginning when they first approached us. And so it's sort of, it's the, it used to be the Highway 17 Association, and then when 87 was proposed, they decided since 17 goes to Williamston to Virginia, and 87 is going to go from Williamston to Raleigh, they asked us to join. We joined, but that's one of mine, but I cut 4,000 from it. I just, for the record, I want everybody to know.
the next item is the HOPE Initiative. This is part of our mental health services that we have with mental health. With an outside agency funding, they requested $10,000, and we have recommended $10,000. Peacemakers, actually this year requested $20,000. The last 2 years, we've funded them $10,000, so we have in there $10,000. Need requested $10,000, and again, as a starting point, we put $5,000 in. The Mercer Foundation requested $6,000. As a starting point, we put in $5,000. United Way requested for 2 different programs, the NC 2-in-1 program and the Community Impact Program. They requested $15,000 for each of the programs, and we just have $5,000. And for each of those, you move down to
So those last 4 are new entries,
They are.
okay, that we have not funded before.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Under the funding partners, with Braz Memorial, the current expense, the requested is $841,880. This is actually based on the percentages that Braswell Library calculated. The percent for Nash County has actually decreased. I believe it's 49%, but the documentation is in the notebook, and so that's why our funding has actually decreased. So she requested less funding, and we put in the amount she requested. For our local libraries, we maintain the $15,000 as requested. Rocky Mountain Wilson Airport, that's our 1/7 that they request every year that we fund as part of that partnership with Rocky Mountain Wilson Airport, $47,857. No capitals requested this year for the airport. Trillium remained at $120,000 for their request for mental health services. And the Forestry Service is actually requesting increase based on a 2.5% salary adjustment that he identified.
And if I may, on the library formula, just let those that might not have been here when we went through this, but for years they were using figures, population figures between Edgecombe, Nash, and Rocky Mount based on 2002. And 2 years ago, everyone agreed we'd update the figures. It's 50% based on population, 50% based on usage. And so we agreed that we would update either yearly or every other year the population figures. And so that's why there's changes now. Instead of the same percentage every single year for 15 years, we're doing it based on a formula that's been updated. This year we went from 50% to for next year to 49%.
You say you adjust the population, do you not look at usages at some
Yeah.
point too? So
Yeah.
it's both?
Both,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Any questions on those?
On the Forestry Service, you said that's a salary increase?
That is correct. That's what he indicated in the email that he sent, that the reason for the increase was due to an anticipated salary adjustment.
And in their defense, the Forestry Service gives us a number every year, but they only draw down what they use, and generally, it's around 80-85% of what we budget. This past year, they, what did they do? They bought a vehicle, or? There was something that they did that they pretty much used it all. But that number, that 117,515, in a typical year, I would say it's going to be 100,000 or less, unless they do some capital project that the state also helps pay for.
So would this final increase be based upon the total county population? Let's just say the county total population got 2% or got a bonus. Would this increase be based on that, or
They're state employees.
their state, so it's
Yeah.
separate? Okay,
Right.
thank
So
you.
if you, he sent the Forestry Service, our district director, district forester, he sent an email, it's on page 201, and he broke down the pieces of it, so the total budget for, is 293,789. The state portion of that is 60%, and Nash County's portion is 40%.
So they're expecting a 2.5% from the state?
Right. That's my understanding based on the email that he sent. So it's an overall increase from the state for salary.
On the airport, we have heard from time to time that due to the new fueling station that was built out there, at some point, it may get where the partners don't contribute. Any update on that in working in this budget, Z, or we just using what we used last year?
For current expense?
Yes, for the Rocky Mount Wilson Airport,
Yeah,
current expense.
we got a letter from them, right?
That was the request as part of our percentage of the funding partnership.
Which is the same it has been for a while.
That is correct.
Right. And
They
again,
have been indicated that that would eventually probably go away because they were selling so much fuel, so it wasn't any adjustment for this year. Is that a question worth asking, I guess?
well, based on my last conversation with them out at the airport, they had a 5-year plan to become self-sufficient.
Right.
Since they're taking over fuel cells and everything.
Yeah.
They've now modified that, and that started a year or two ago. They think they can do it in 3 or 4 years
Okay.
to become
So
self-sufficient.
it'll be at one time rather than in increments then?
Right,
Okay, that's fine.
right.
Are there any questions on any of the requests or?
Any proposed changes? This would be a good time to, if there's anything that,
The other thing that we changed with our outside agencies is we requested a mid-year update from our funding partners, and I believe I provided all the county commissioners with the mid-year update that we received
You did?
from the funding partners.
Sure did. Questions on agenda item 9? Any commissioners? Did you receive any additional outside requests that didn't get in the budget from anyone? I see you got 4 new ones. Was there anything else that brought to you that we didn't put in here?
These were the only new ones that we received. If
Okay.
they requested it, we put it in an agency requested.
Okay.
I have a question you may not be able to answer, but I'm going to ask that you may know. Peacemaker, I know it was founded and started in South Rocky Mountain, and it kind of had reached a little bit of the Little Rock area. Are they expanding? I'm looking at the increase. Are they expanding their operation to reach out further than just that specific area?
Well, you know, they've got the school, a portion of it is done in Edgecombe County over in Tarboro the last few years. And that's the
Well, I'm
summer.
thinking about it there in the city.
Correct.
Are they expanding?
Well, you aware they have relocated into a different facility?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I don't understand your question yet, then, Mr. Belfield.
I just wanted to know if they are expanding the programs that they are running beyond South Rocky Mountain and maybe a little edge of Little Rock. Are they moving further out within the city where the type of program that they're running, there are needs?
I think the programs are certainly available to anyone that wishes to go there, but as far as facilities that they operate in.
And I'm not talking about the facilities.
Okay.
I'm just talking about
Okay.
the program reaching out.
Sure.
They don't need facilities, I don't think. They got adequate where they are.
They do have, you mentioned the summer education programs?
Yeah, which they do in Edgecombe County as well,
Tarboro, yeah,
and here.
in here.
The way I see it, what little I know about Mr. Belfield, the programs are available for anyone. The facilities are just located in the area that you described. And, you know, they also, I don't know that they still were, but during the challenges over at Williford School, they were actually operating something over there as well for a period of time.
It's a good program.
It is.
I just concerned whether if it was open to a broader area than what they had targeted. I remember when, in fact, I was in one of the meetings where they targeted South Rocky Mountain. And I was just wondering if they, with the increase in funding, I was wondering if they were spreading out a little bit further and target some of the other needed areas in the city of Rocky Mountain.
Well, if it's okay, Mr. Outlaw, could you talk with the chairman of that board and just get an answer for that?
Sure.
I know you know him well.
I can tell you the new facility is right at where you're talking about,
Right.
so I would be surprised if there are not a lot of people from that area going to Peacemakers and utilizing their services, but I'll speak and see if they've expanded their programs.
And I would think you got kids from all over the whole
Yeah.
city limits of Rocky Mountain, and maybe even some in Nye County that attend those programs. Other questions on this item?
Well,
Mr. Aaron?
yeah, I'll go back to the Spalding Center. You know, I'm gonna ask, well, their budget is $53,000, and I know it's been a tough year, and I would, well, suggest we could add $5,000.
Which one was that, Mr.
The
Aaron?
Spalding
Spalding Center, okay.
Center. Kind of, and we'll need to work on those items that,
I would love to get an update from them. I do know that that facility is now, that they were originally in, has been turned back over to them, or donated to them. And I'd like to get an update on what it is they're doing. Are they still in the original location they moved to downtown on Old 64 in the daycare? And what is their intent on going back to the original location?
we need to have that total discussion.
Right, yeah. Maybe we can get an update on what they're doing and considering the request you had. That facility that they moved out of has been donated back to them by the gentleman that bought it, but it would take, if Ben's has not been utilized for a 6-month period, it's going to take a lot of funds to be able to get that back open and be able to be used, because you lost your rights, is the way the inspection department's going to look at it, to occupy it. And I'm afraid they're going to find it very challenging to get it up to a standard that would allow them to have classes and so forth back in the building. But I would think they would be aware of that. I'm not sure.
Okay. We'll get all that information. Right.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Lamb, you got any?
It as a, question mark as I come back. With, that-
What's that, sir?
About that request, I said, well, anyway, that's a question mark as to, I come back with,
Yeah, I think
Really?
Ms. Wood would have noted your request, I'm sure, about to increase that, and it would probably help the board decide. I know it would be if we knew what their future plans were as far as the other facilities.
that's why I said we'll come, try to get an update.
Yes, sir.
That-
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Mhm.
All right.
Mr. Lamb, we got about 25 minutes ahead of schedule, which is highly unusual. Is there any more filler information you want to give us?
You want me to stand up and talk for 25 minutes?
If it is productive to the citizens of Nash County, that would be great, sir.
No, sir, I don't have anything else.
Anything else, Ms. Wood, or any other staff?
The only thing I could suggest, not for today's, but there's an item on tomorrow's agenda where we're just going over our grant programs and our outstanding capital projects, just a quick overview, and I thought I could go ahead and give that list today if the commissioners are interested.
That would be great, if
It-
that's
It's a short item. It's actually on page 263, 264.
263, 264.
And this sort of leads into or it's a continuation of the discussion of the American Rescue Plan and our other projects that we have going on.
Okay?
So I just wanted to go over with the board what Nash County is doing in addition to our regular day-to-day operations within our departments. Within our grant department, with Patsy and Jacob, we have our CDBG Neighborhood Revitalization Grant Project. We have the CDBG Golden Leaf Disaster Recovery Project, which is the Elm Street project. As we've talked about, the coronavirus relief funds. In addition to that, we have other CARES Act funding for coronavirus. Right now, we have $884,000. I'm bringing an amendment to the board to add over $1 million just for the health department from CARES Act funding through the state. CDBG coronavirus, the $900,000. We have our essential family rehab programs. We have the loan pool and the disaster recovery from 2017. We have new essential single-family rehab programs for 2020, loan pool. We have the 2020 urgent repair program. We've received the abandoned manufactured home grant. That will be presented April 5th. It's a $27,000 grant. We still have outstanding our hazard mitigation with Hurricane Matthew and the buyout program. And we're also still working with our debris removal in our water areas with soil and water. And then, as the county manager spoke about earlier,
Well, let me say this. These are multi-year funds. These aren't in the general fund. These are things that we have special budgets for, and they go more than 1 year. And the 18 million there is not the cumulative total. It's a separate, even though it's lined up there, it's the money that we're going to get over the next 2 years.
There's not a line under debris removal.
I know, I know. But when I first saw it, I thought it was,
I did do a quick total and realized that's not what it was.
yeah.
I just wanted to go over with the commissioners where our grant projects are and where we're receiving that funding, and then to let you know the dollar amount that I saw as the estimate for the American Rescue Plan, $18,288,516.
Well, like the debris removal, quite a bit of those funds are already spent,
That is accurate.
and that's probably true with all of them.
That is true. But we are still, there are ongoing projects
Sure.
that we have, just to let you know that they are out there, and we are working with our citizens in addition to our other services. We certainly have grant programs that we work with our citizens on. And then with our capital projects, we have the new replacement elementary school, currently budgeted $10,750,000. But again, that's pending our loan closure and project updates. So we're looking at over $20 million for that project.
And break that down, y'all previously, 2 or 3 years ago, or, yeah, to put some seed money in that project, you appropriated $750,000, and now we're going to do a loan for 10,000?
$10,150,000.
Yeah, 10,150,000. So was it 600 that we,
$750,000.
okay.
That's what we had already budgeted for that project.
Right. So we put in the county commissioners
forgot about
budgeted $750,000. The $10 million is from the needs-based grant.
That's right. And then we're going to add another 10,150,000.
So we will hopefully be able to take that $750,000 and put it back in our capital project reserves.
Correct.
We have the Middlesex Water Sewer Road project going on, the Middlesex Tank and Water Loop project, Miracle Park project, still ongoing, our high-speed internet project, which we just funded for Phase 3, and hopefully we can use some of our American Rescue Plan to reimburse ourselves for that and take care of our internet throughout Nash County. The detention center expansion, currently we have $1 million in that project, but again, that's pending the funding that we'll get, and then project updates associated with that. And the plan for that is around $10 million for that expansion. The Northern Nash Water System, Phase 1, we received $9,545,000 in grant and loans for that project, and then the rest has come from funding from the general fund or the existing water sewer fund. And then we also have our solid waste LCID Phase 2 project that is close to completion. But there are current separate capital project funds and grant funds that we have existing with the county. So I just wanted to give you an update. I know you get our project update every, I believe, once a month. But just to give you an overview of some of the things you may not see on that with the grant projects, just wanted to put those back in front of you as well.
Good. In our proposed budget, Mr. Lamb, have we included any funds for the anticipated animal shelter that we should be building next year?
No, sir.
We have not.
No, it's not in, and we don't have it in the capital, the CIP either. I think we were looking at other, possible other funding sources. So we have the land that we paid for in the current year, but we don't have the facility
Okay.
out there at this point.
Well, I would anticipate that construction would take place this next year, and I would think we would need to do that to make sure we don't miss the opportunity to get the remainder of the grant that we got for that. I do know the grantee, whichever, grantor, it has an expectation of seeing that in the next.
What is the match anticipated?
I think yours and our last discussion, it was going to be somewhere between 800,000 and $1 million, but we've already put,
900 in the land.
yeah, but part of that came from the grantor. We've already put 400 in.
Okay, we put 400.
Yeah, I would have to look at my notes, but I'm thinking we need that in next year's budget. Would you agree,
You should-
Mr. Outlaw?
You should have in excess of $1 million
Correct, we
available to
do.
go to that building,
That's correct,
right?
yeah. And I'm afraid if we don't act on that, I just know the grantor had an expectation of seeing a continued movement towards that facility.
So y'all suggesting 500,000 more?
I would like to review my notes, and I'll let you know that tomorrow.
Okay.
I just don't want to tell you something that's inaccurate. And then the other, I'm just asking this question to see what you got in your mind, Mr. Lamb, is the other somewhat commitment this board has made is the new field house at Northern Nash with the school system after we finished up the Red Oak Elementary School process of knowing what we had spent. So we need to have a discussion on that as well.
Would that need to be funded in the coming year budget?
I think probably some portion of it may need to be to start the process, but maybe the major part of it could roll to another year. I mean, it's a board decision. We haven't, other than to say, you know, that we want to move forward with it, we really hadn't had that much discussion on it. But my anticipation was that during the coming year, we'd be at least getting plans done and so forth and get ready for it.
Yeah. Again, given that we're 12 million off.
I understand.
And we don't know about the American Rescue Plan.
Sure.
And how we can spend those money, that might be something we can use for both the animal shelter and other capital needs. So I really am anticipating getting the guidance this week, so.
Well, I just want to get it noted that
Yeah.
those two were out there.
One way or the other, we need to fund it, I understand.
At least the animal shelter, I do feel we need to. The school, some portion thereof to at least get, maybe the architect employed and so forth.
Well, we need a reimbursement resolution on that. No, we're not gonna borrow money.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would we borrow money on that at all? I don't think
On
so.
what?
On the animal shelter, would be grant and direct appropriation?
I would ask for your recommendation on that, but that would be my anticipation. But that, you need to bring something to us to make a decision on that. I think we generally have tried to, a project that size, try not to borrow funds for unless you incorporate it with something else. May well fit well under the American Rescue Plan.
And I don't know if there'd be any cost, but there may be some cost to remove that home that sits on that property.
Yeah. No, you at least do the asbestos, I mean, you got to do the environmental report on it and see what the cost
We
would be.
talked about potential for a fire training exercise or something like that.
Yep. Is there any other capital thing that we're not thinking about, any board member?
And related to that, I don't know how much we're talking about, but I have been in contact with the DOT, highway easement folks
Yes.
about acquiring additional right-of-way. So I'm not anticipating a big check from them, but that will be something we will be looking at down the line, and I think it was,
Well, let's talk before you settle with them, because
well, I will, I-
there is
don't worry.
a lot of strange things going on along that corridor.
Yeah. One thing that Jonathan brought up, I think yesterday during capital projects meeting, was the need coming west for a turning lane into the animal shelter. And we may need to touch base with DOT about that. There'll be a center lane going left. going from the west to the east. But he was suggesting that we may need a little turning lane there where the animal shelter is going to go.
I think they're going to be more amenable to going into the roundabout and coming around the roundabout to go into it. That's just me.
That was my thought.
I don't think they're going to want a turning lane there.
Certainly hear from Mr. Boone, but I would think with it being right there at the roundabout,
Yes, sir.
it would be certainly doable.
Yeah, I was just
In the
saying that.
discussions I've had along that corridor, all these roundabouts, they're not having turn lanes in various areas. They're using the roundabouts as you turn, do a U-turn and come back. So, but you can ask them.
The purchase of the Sheets property out there a number of years ago has made the right-of-way settlements fairly difficult through that stretch, to say the least.
What did you say, Mr. Chairman?
I said the purchase of the Sheets property a number of years ago to set a standard for land value has made the right-of-way purchases very difficult in that area.
I've been keeping track of all the Eastern Avenue acquisitions,
Yep.
and they're paying a pretty good sum for a lot of them.
They are, or a lot of them not settled yet, but
Correct.
the ask
They've only
is,
filed 2 lawsuits so far.
yeah, the ask is pretty significant.
Yes.
What else you got?
I think lunch is next on the agenda.
You don't have 9 more minutes of discussion?
How long will Thomas's thing take?
He has, Thomas actually has a PowerPoint for us
Have lunch and maybe we
to give
can
us
get
an
out here
update.
sooner.
So we could move ahead with that if we can get him in here.
What if we go ahead and take lunch then if we're that close to it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
lunch is here, Emily is setting up, so by the time we get over there, we should be good.
Where is it over
In the
there?
break room,
Are we going over there? Are we coming back here or staying over there?
staying over there, they've got tables set up.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's okay.
I come here looking direction, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir, in the
I'm
break
come here
room.
looking directions from you.
I say let's just go on over there and get it over with, come back here and get out soon.
All right, sounds good to me. I do have a
It
4
should
o'clock
be
meeting
an
I'd love to go
advantage for
to.
me.
That's why I went.
Okay. Me and you both. All right, we stand in recess for lunch at this time.